Hey, welcome to Do Business Better. We've got with us today Neil Damerow. Neil Damerow has a recruitment business, and we'll talk about that a little bit in just one second. But Neil, how are you going today?
Really good, Kevin. Fantastic, thank you, for a rainy Thursday.
Yeah, it's kind of unusual, the weather right now, but let's not, because people could watch this in a year's time, so let's not worry about that part. Let's talk a little bit more. You've got a recruitment business. What's that called?
It's called 1300 Hired, and the labour hire component is called WorkScan.
Okay, so you've got two businesses in one. You've had a pretty interesting background, but before we get to what you're currently doing, let's talk about what got you into business in the first point. What was that tipping point where you went, hey, I want to do this for myself?
I suppose that's a really good question. I had an ambition to be a master of my own destiny, and by starting my own business, that was one way to do that and to prove to myself that I could actually do it. The tipping point is probably two parts. The first part was I actually had a significant back injury when I was an employee, and I was off work for 8 weeks, literally on my back, immobile for about 6 weeks. So what I did, I gathered market information, competitive data, got legislative frameworks and business structure in place. And then the second step was going from working at part-time and after hours to quitting my full-time job. And I left my last job as an employee. So that's
what was that doing?
I've been nearly 12 years with BHP, and I actually progressed away from BHP, went to work for a small company to get small company experience for about 5-6 months. And in that time, the contracting through my WorkScan business started to take off.
Yep.
So I left that business and went full time into business as WorkScan.
Your own employee. Excellent. Yep. And so many people do that transition. Some make a really clean break, and I'm going from here to that, and others do the transition. There's no right way. It's just whatever's right for you. What was the one thing that's made the greatest impact and taken your business forward the most?
The biggest impact is people. Relationships are really key. So you've got to pick the right staff. So internally, get the right staff on board. And then externally, you've got to make sure that the right businesses and the people within those businesses as your clients are the right people to deal with. So basically, when you get the internal and external relationships spot on, growth comes naturally and things flow from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those, that balancing act of that internal, external, the communication both ways and having the right focus in your business is really one of those challenging things. How do you balance that?
Balance it really differently to what I used to balance it, because now I'm running a business as a virtual business. So all my staff are actually remote, with the exception of one person that comes in about once every couple of months. And then balancing that with, I suppose these days in like a different client framework, because our 1300 Hired business is different.
It's pretty much an online thing, 1300 Hired, isn't it?
It is pretty much online. So it's really a case of balancing the people that are working remotely and keeping that communication going with then my functions as client contact, doing business development.
So much of it is online, and let me understand a little bit more about your recruitment business for a second. So as much as it's an online business, you still are very involved. Like, it's not a tech solution completely, is it?
No, not at all. So there's still that people component, but the model that we set up was essentially to eradicate all the problems and pain points that I had in the previous business, and a lot of things I didn't like about recruitment. So setting up a business, so no bricks and mortar, no salaried staff, very little fixed overhead, and then setting it up online so we could actually scale the business nationally, not just rely on Brisbane only.
Fantastic. So a mantra or a saying that you've got, what's the something that you find repeating either to yourself or to clients on a regular basis?
To myself, well, I've probably got about 3, Kevin. The first one to myself quite often is, if it's to be, it's up to me. So no one's actually going to step in and do it for me. So, It's pretty much staying away from, some people might call it like a victim thing. It's not someone else's responsibility. It actually all starts with you. So everything comes internally. You can't be relying on external. You've got to get yourself right. So if it's to be, it's up to me, number one. Second one, your success depends on the quality of the questions that you ask. Now that's from Tony Robbins.
Why do you say that now, Neil?
If you ask the wrong questions, you get the wrong answers.
It's just a joke. Cool. The quality of the questions you ask will lead to the success that you're having. Great.
That's it.
You said there were three. Is there a third one?
Yeah, there's a third one, and it's Henry Ford. If you think you can or think you can't, either way, you're right. So that's really a strong mindset thing for me, that sometimes I've got to challenge myself and say, hold on, I'll pull myself back and think, hold on, no, wait a minute. I know I can do that, but what is it that's holding me back? And so I look within myself to find, try and find what's holding me back. And basically anything's possible.
Awesome.
Virtually anything's possible.
Now, I'm going to go on a little bit of a side here and backtrack to the greatest impact. You mentioned that you've got a number of people working remotely for you.
Correct.
How do you manage that?
Differently. So how I manage that is basically there's daily communication. Which we're developing and fine tuning. We for staff that are overseas, like say in the Philippines, we use different things like for access to systems. We use a thing called LastPass. So basically, all the things that they need access to, you've got a username and a password. You authorize them. So if something changes, you can
But more, how are you managing them and making sure they're staying on track, making sure that they're all working cohesively and producing the outcome that is desired? That's more the question. Not technical. I don't care about the technical. I'm not a technical guy. You know that.
Look, basically, Kevin, it comes down to communication and being clear within yourself and then with everyone. What are the priorities for the day? What are the jobs that we're working on that are priorities, and get everyone working on the right thing. So obviously, I need to be active in the business to manage that. So it really comes down to just clear communication, and also clear communication that if you're not sure about something, because we're not in the same office, get on the phone or through Messenger, instant messaging, and talk. Let's talk.
Awesome. No, that's great. Now, the next one, going back on track. So a setback or a challenge through to victory. What was one of the setbacks that you've had in your business life, and how have you overcome that?
Well, one of it wasn't so much a setback, but it was more of a putting the brakes on the business when the business was in growth mode. And we knew that the business was in growth mode and going to be for quite some time. This has coincided with the mining boom.
Yep.
We were self-funded up to about $4.5 million a year. And in a period of rapid growth, we had to then watch client selection, had to tell our consultants, okay, you have to come and talk to me before and ask the right questions about when we're going to get paid. 30-day terms doesn't mean 30 days, actually means 60 days. So we had
a lot of mining clients particularly. Yeah, I know they can be really challenging to deal with.
And some of those are now 90. But so we were being strangled by cash flow if we wanted to grow. So I undertook a review with our bank, did this about 4 months in advance of when we needed it. Took about 6 weeks to get in place. And then by the time that we'd actually continued to grow, we actually had about 2 weeks left before we're actually going to be strangled for cash.
Yeah,
so
growing broke is a common. Growing broke is a challenge. People think, "Hey, I'm going to grow; that'll all be profitable," but they forget the cash flow implication of that. And particularly in recruitment, what a lot of people won't realize. I've come from a recruitment background, and as do you. And it's like if you've got a temp platform out there, you're paying them every week, and you might not get paid for 30, 60, 90 days. So that means at the end of that, you've got 13 weeks of pay that is outstanding that you spent before you're getting $1 back, and that's what really hurts. Yeah, absolutely. And the upshot that came out of that is that we were then able to say to our consultants within guidelines, go out and get all the business, go out and grab everything, even if it was 30 days.
we could still go and grab that business. And then what happened is that like the mindset was, okay, there's a cost in doing that facility with a bank, but the value, like the cost was there, the value was up there like that, and the cost become immaterial. And then staff morale, business growth actually went exponential after that.
Fantastic. So, that exponential growth actually brought you under the eye of some publicly listed companies that started coming and have a chat with you about could they buy your business at one stage, I hear.
That's correct. So we weren't looking for it, weren't expecting it. We started off, we had a private equity firm that had a couple of meetings. They approached us. Wouldn't say who they were representing, but we had a pretty good idea in broad terms. That didn't go anywhere because of private equity wasn't what we were looking for, didn't see the fit. And then a short time later, we had a publicly listed company made an approach. We had some series of meetings right down to going through all the nuts and bolts of the business, all the financials. That was very interesting.
So that didn't go ahead in the end. You couldn't come to terms financially, that wasn't the right fit, or your business you didn't feel was the right fit for them, or what was the story?
It was potentially the right fit, but they had concerns about one component of our business. So like, even though we don't talk desks, but across the business, three components. So we had perm placements, contract placements, and payroll. They couldn't get their head around the payroll part of the business, which is what we call like low margin business that's given to you by a client. They couldn't get their head around that.
Yeah, and that can happen from time to time, and that brings up a really important point that so many small business owners have as one of their goals that they'll be able to sell their business, to tip into their superannuation fund or to largely be part of their investment in their future lifestyle. And yet it's so important to make sure that we're being realistic about that, because you had a business that looked great and was producing profit and everything was fantastic. And yet because of one component, it could have scuttled, if that was the time when you were looking to retire, could have scuttled the whole thing, the whole deal, and put everything in jeopardy, or had your business really undervalued quite significantly from what you thought it was worth.
That's correct, and I think that would have been, if it had progressed, it would have been probably a difference between what they thought, what I thought it was worth. But if it's not going ahead and you're at a retirement stage or planning on that, then you'd actually go and fix that up, go and approach other companies, or go back to the same company. However,
absolutely. So it's so important that as we're building our business, we're not just relying on that nest egg at the end, that we're actually enjoying the experience of being in business, that we're enjoying the process of growth and the challenge of it. It doesn't mean that we're going to have beer and Skittles every single day. Some days are going to be a struggle, but at the end of the day, the whole experience needs to be a positive one. And that's something that I've always been a big fan of, that we keep some kind of balance in what we're doing for what the business will be worth in the future, and what we're experiencing today, so that we're keeping some value for the future, but we're also getting and extracting some value today. Not everyone agrees with that. That's just my personal philosophy. Now, we always like to have some topical tips. So being in recruitment and having a business that, someone approached you to buy, pretty cool stuff. So for a topical tip, can you give us what is really important in both of those processes?
Okay. Well, I've got three things written down, but overriding all that, I've got to say, in any business, and particularly in recruitment, but any business, people are the key, and people are the most complex commodity on this planet. So top three tips when recruiting. First one, always be looking in advance of when you have a need. So always be recruiting. And I say that because we see so many businesses, like small, medium, large businesses, that they only start looking when they've got an urgent need, or someone leaves, and that urgency creates a sense, actually creates things that occur where you're making suboptimal decisions because of, got to get someone on quickly. Whereas if you've got someone, that you're talking to, or people that you're talking to, you've got a potential pipeline of someone that you can approach without having to go different channels.
There's a whole theory around that with bench warming and stuff, and having a few people that are kind of ready to go, that you've been keeping people warm and keeping people ready, so that if a hole happens and you need to fill that in a hurry, you've got someone ready. And that's always an awesome thing to do, is to be making sure that you are talking to people who could potentially sit in that seat. Absolutely.
So the second one is you've got to get the cultural fit right first. So you've got to have a fit between the person that you're bringing in and the culture of the organisation. And quite often, you say these things because you've actually lived and breathed the experience. And I can tell you, I've actually done some pearlers myself, and where stuff was patently obvious, and I was probably the one that didn't see it amongst staff. So yeah, you've got to get that cultural fit right. If it's not right, it's not going to work. And then finally, recruit for attitude. It's a pretty well-known saying, is that you can teach skills, but you can't teach attitude. So you got the person with and you're not. Doesn't mean that you're going to recruit for attitude and not the right skills. Obviously, they're going to have the right skills, but go for the attitude first. Because if they've got a great attitude,
and if someone doesn't have the right values, they're never going to fit into your business and that sort of stuff. We do have a quick question that somebody has said, not sure if this is relevant to recruitment. Let's not worry about that. I have a client that is looking to move out of his business, but is hesitant to hire a manager because he believes the manager will learn his process, then leave and start his own business. Have you seen this happen in recruitment? Of course, we've all seen that happen in recruitment. But have you seen that happen in business? Should you be more scared of that or more scared of growing?
You should be more fearful of not growing. And if you're not going to grow if you don't actually get that manager on. So you've actually got to make that decision and get the right person on. Don't be in fear of
It comes back to that age-old question about training staff, doesn't it? Hey, would you prefer to invest in training them and lose them, or to not invest in training them and having them still there, not trained?
That's exactly it. That's a great answer to one.
Look, it is about looking after your team and looking after the growth of your business. And to do that, if part of your business is you want to have an asset to sell, and part of that strategy is you believe that you need to put a manager in there so that the business is a real easy turnkey proposition, then you need to treat that person that you're putting in there so awesome that they don't want to go anywhere else.
Exactly.
And that's the challenge. And it really is the challenge. So, thanks for that.
And to whoever who asked that question, I've got to say from my own experience, that's something that I actually regret that I did not do when I should have done it. In terms of putting a manager in. And
it is a real challenge, because so often our egos get in the way of that as well. So but we'll talk about ego another day. So awesome. So the greatest impact on your business was, one more time?
Greatest impact on the business is people and relationships. So internal relationships with your staff, everything there flows from there. And actually, again, Richard Branson backs it up, saying you get your staff right first, the client stuff will follow.
Absolutely. So cool. So it is all about relationships on the greatest impact. The sayings, you had 3 different sayings about if it is to be, it's up to me. The second one was?
Your success depends on the quality of the questions that you ask.
See, I should have asked a better question, would have got a different answer there. And the third one was?
Third one, if you think you can or think you can't, either way, you're right.
You are right. Excellent. So it's been a really interesting chat, and thanks very much for, you've had a wealth of experience and a lot of different stuff happen across the time. So it's fantastic to hear that, you're part of the group and you're here to share your knowledge and that sort of stuff. If anyone does have any questions about growing their business, about putting it in a position that's right for sale, I'm sure Neil would be happy to have a chat with you. Just comment below and then start a conversation. Neil, get back to everyone that's having a chat. This is the one thing I'm going to encourage you to do. Thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. Thanks very much, Neil.
That's great. Thanks very much for having me on board, Kevin. And good afternoon, everyone.
That's okay. 1300 Hired and Neil Damerow. Thanks very much for your time.